The massive chamber stretched out like a cathedral made of crystal and starlight. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the curved seats that rose in perfect circles around the central speaking platform. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime to convert hundreds of alien languages into something everyone could understand. Captain Li Wujin stood in the defendant dock at the center of it all. His dark uniform was crisp and clean, but his face showed the weight of what was coming. He had served humanity for 30 years, among the stars. He had fought pirates and explored new worlds. He had made friends with alien races and helped build trade routes between distant planets. Now he stood accused of being a threat to galactic peace. Behind him sat the human delegation. Ambassador Park So-young held her electronic tablet so tight, her knuckles had turned white. She was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced. She spoke 12 alien languages fluently and had negotiated dozens of successful treaties. But today, her skills meant nothing. The decision had already been made, before they even arrived. Admiral Kim Tae-ho sat in the back row of the human section. At 42, he was the youngest fleet commander in human history. His sharp mind had helped humanity expand to 17 different star systems in just 50 years. He had always believed that humans could find their place among the galactic community. Today that belief was being tested. The council speaker rose from the central podium. The being was 12 feet tall and made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its transparent body in patterns that somehow conveyed emotion. Right now those patterns were cold and final. "We have heard all testimony," the speaker announced. Its voice echoed through perfect acoustics that made every word crystal clear. "We have reviewed all evidence. The time has come for judgment." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of life support systems seemed to pause. Three alien representatives waited to hear humanity's fate. "The charges are clear," the speaker continued. "Reckless expansion beyond approved zones. Failure to follow established colonization protocols. Disregard for ancient territorial boundaries. Dangerous unpredictability in diplomatic relations." Li Wujin kept his face blank, but inside, his heart was racing. The charges were not entirely false. Humans had expanded faster than any species in recorded galactic history. They had settled on worlds that other races had deemed too dangerous or too difficult. They had built cities in asteroid fields and on moons that experienced constant volcanic activity. They had thrived in places where others had failed. But humanity had never broken any actual laws. They had followed every treaty they had signed. They had paid their taxes to the galactic government. They had contributed to defense fleets and exploration missions. Their only crime was being different. "The evidence shows a pattern," the speaker went on. "Humans do not respect the natural order. They change environments to suit their needs rather than adapting to existing conditions. They form alliances with species that other civilizations have deemed unstable. They take risks that endanger not just themselves but entire star systems." Ambassador Park So-young stood up. "Honored Speaker, we request permission to respond to these charges." The crystal being's internal lights shifted to what humans had learned meant annoyance. "The time for testimony has passed. We move now to the vote." "But you have not allowed us to present our full defense," Park So-young protested. "Humanity has contributed greatly to galactic civilization. Our medical advances have saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Our engineering solutions have solved problems that plagued the galaxy for centuries. Our explorers have discovered new trade routes and resources that benefit everyone." "Silence," the speaker commanded. The word carried the weight of absolute authority. "The human delegation will not interrupt these proceedings again." Park So-young sat down, but her eyes burned with anger. She had spent her entire career building bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. She had believed that understanding and cooperation could overcome any difference. Now she was watching that belief crumble. The speaker raised one crystalline arm. "We call for the vote. All in favor of Resolution 847 to declare humanity a threat to galactic stability and order their immediate exile from all territories outside the Sol system." Lights began to flash across the chamber as representatives cast their votes. The voting display showed the results in real time. Green lights for exile. Red lights against yellow for abstention. The green lights outnumbered everything else by a massive margin. Species that had worked alongside humans for decades voted for exile. Trading partners who had profited from human innovation voted for exile. Even some species that humans had helped during disasters and conflicts voted for exile. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched the display with growing horror. He had expected opposition, but not this complete rejection. The final tally appeared on the main screen. 847 votes for exile, 3 votes against, 12 abstentions. The resolution passes. The speaker announced, effective immediately. All human personnel outside the Sol system have 30 standard galactic cycles to return to their home territory. Any human found in galactic space after that deadline will be considered a hostile invader. Li Wujin finally spoke. His voice was calm and steady despite the chaos erupting around him. What about our colonies, our cities, our people who have lived their entire lives on worlds outside Sol? They must choose. The speaker replied, return to Earth or renounce their human citizenship and remain as individuals without government protection. You are asking us to abandon everything we have built. Park Soyoung said, generations of work and progress. You should have considered that before threatening galactic stability, the speaker answered. This session is concluded. Human vessels have one planetary rotation to leave council space. The chamber erupted in noise as thousands of beings began talking at once. Some seemed satisfied with the decision. Others appeared uncomfortable with what they had just witnessed. A few species that had voted for exile were already approaching other delegations to discuss how they might divide up abandoned human territories. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood and walked to where Lee Woo-jin and Park So-young were gathering their materials. We need to move fast, he said quietly. I have ships waiting at the edge of the system. What about our people? Park So-young asked. How do we tell 3 million humans that they have to leave everything behind? We tell them the truth, Lee Woo-jin said. The galaxy has decided they do not want us here. Kim Tae-ho looked back at the alien representatives who were still celebrating their victory. Send a message to all human colonies and ships. Use the emergency channels. Tell them Operation Homecoming begins now. What is Operation Homecoming? Park So-young asked. Kim Tae-ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Something we hoped we would never need, but we prepared for this possibility. As the human delegation left the chamber, none of them noticed the small group of aliens watching from the upper galleries. These beings had voted against the exile, but their voices had been drowned out by the majority. They understood something that the others did not. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that had destroyed other civilizations. They had spread across their own galaxy and then reached for the stars. They had adapted to environments that killed other species and thrived in conditions that others found impossible. Exiling humanity would not destroy them. It would only make them stronger. The galaxy had just made the biggest mistake in its history. They had given humanity a reason to stop playing by the rules. And humanity had always been at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. 6 months had passed since the vote that changed everything. The Great Withdrawal was happening across 17 star systems as 3 million humans prepared to leave the only homes many of them had ever known. Ships moved constantly between planets carrying families and equipment and memories of lives that were ending. Dr. Choi Mingi stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the last transport ships load with refugees. She had been the lead scientist here for 8 years, studying alien plant life. Her laboratory contained samples from 40 different worlds. Her research had led to medical breakthroughs that saved lives across the galaxy. Now she was packing it all into storage containers that might never be opened again. The families boarding the transports below looked lost and confused. Children who had been born on these distant worlds were being told they had to go to a place called Earth that existed only in stories their grandparents told. Adults were leaving behind businesses and friendships and dreams that had taken decades to build. Dr. Choi called her assistant Ru Hyansu. The last biological samples are secured. What about the restricted research files? Minji looked at the sealed cabinet containing her most sensitive work. Inside were genetic samples from hundreds of alien species. Most had been freely shared by other scientists. Some had been collected during joint research projects. A few had been gathered in ways that might not have been entirely legal but were certainly ethical. All of it was supposed to be destroyed before they left. Pack it all, she said quietly. Everything goes with us. But the evacuation orders say we cannot take restricted materials. Hyansu protested. Minji smiled for the first time in months. They exiled us from their galaxy. That means their rules no longer apply to us. 400 light-years away, Admiral Yoon Dae-sung coordinated the massive fleet movements from his flagship. The logistics were staggering. Human colonies were scattered across space in a rough sphere, nearly 800 light-years across. Some settlements had only a few thousand people. Others housed millions in sprawling cities that covered entire continents. The furthest colonies would take nearly 2 years to reach. Sol system, even with the fastest ships. The closest would be home in a few months. But every single human outside Sol had to make the same choice. Come home or stay and lose their protection forever. Admiral, reported his communications officer, Lee Soo-jin, we have confirmation from the Tau Ceti colonies. All civilian transports have launched. The industrial facilities are being stripped of anything valuable. What about the mining operations in the asteroid belt there? Asked Yoon Dae-sung. Commander Han Ji-woo is handling those personally. Commander Han Ji-woo was not technically supposed to be in the Tau Ceti system. Her mission was classified and her small fleet of ships carried no official identification. While most humans were fleeing toward Earth, she was moving in the opposite direction, toward abandoned research stations and military facilities. Her orders came directly from Admiral Kim Tae-ho and were simple. Salvage everything useful that humanity might need later. That included equipment and supplies and weapons. But most importantly, it included information. Target acquired. Reported her pilot Park Dong-hyeon. The research station appears empty, but I am reading power signatures from the lower levels. Take us in carefully, Gi-woo ordered. If anyone is still there, we do not want to surprise them. The station had been abandoned for 3 weeks, according to official records. But Ji-woo had learned not to trust official records. The galaxy had voted to exile humanity, but that did not mean they wanted humans to leave with everything they had built. The docking bay was empty, except for scattered equipment that had been left behind in the rush to evacuate. Ji-woo led her team through corridors that still smelled like human coffee and alien cleaning compounds. The normal sounds of a working station were gone. Only the hum of life support systems remained. Commander, called her technical specialist, Kim Young-ho, the main computers have been wiped, but the backup systems are still intact. I can recover most of the research data. Do it fast, Ji-woo replied. We have 12 more stations to visit before we head home. While Ji-woo collected data and equipment, other teams were working on a different kind of salvage operation. In the asteroid mining belt around the star humans, called New Shanghai engineer Ru Soo-jin was making discoveries that would change everything. Soo-jin had been working the asteroid fields for 5 years. She knew every rock worth mining and every hazard worth avoiding. Her job was to extract rare metals that were used in starship construction. It was dangerous work, but it paid well, and she enjoyed the challenge. Now she was supposed to pack up the mining equipment and head back to Earth like everyone else. But something strange had caught her attention during the final survey sweeps. This does not make sense, she told her partner, Oh Min-ki, as they examined the scanner readings. These asteroids show high concentrations of heavy elements, but when I run detailed scans, I get conflicting results. Maybe the equipment is damaged, Min-ki suggested. We have been working it pretty hard during the evacuation, Soo-jin shook her head. I ran diagnostics twice. The scanners are working perfectly. But look at this. She showed him 2 different readouts from the same asteroid. The human equipment showed rich deposits of valuable metals. The alien-made scanner they used for verification showed ordinary rock with trace amounts of common elements. That is impossible, Min-ki said. Both scanners cannot be right. Soo-jin studied the data more carefully. She had always been good at solving puzzles. That skill had made her one of the best miners in the belt. Now it was showing her something that could be much more important than rare metals. What if they are both right? She said slowly. What if there is something in these asteroids that human technology can detect, but alien technology cannot? She spent the next 6 hours running every test she could think of. The results were consistent. The asteroids contained deposits of an unknown element that appeared completely invisible to alien scanners, but showed up clearly on human equipment. We need to collect samples, she told Min-ki, as many as we can carry. Why? It is just unknown rock. Soo-jin looked at him seriously. Unknown rock that only humans can find. In a galaxy that just told us we are not welcome. Do you understand what this could mean? While Soo-jin filled her cargo holds with mysterious asteroids, the Great Exodus continued. Transport ships moved in long convoys protected by military escorts. Families that had lived on alien worlds for generations crowded into ships designed for much shorter journeys. Children cried for pets they had to leave behind. Adults stared out viewports at stars they might never see again. But not everyone was just running away. In hidden compartments throughout the refugee fleet, scientists like Dr. Choi Min-ji carried samples and data that represented decades of research. Engineers had stripped useful technology from every facility they abandoned. Military units like Commander Han Ji-woo's team recovered weapons and equipment that officially did not exist. Most importantly, Admiral Kim Tae-ho's secret plan was working. Operation Homecoming was not just about bringing humans back to Earth. It was about bringing back everything humanity had learned. During 50 years among the stars, the galaxy had voted to exile Earth thinking. They were getting rid of a troublesome neighbor. They thought humans would slink back to their home system and stay there quietly. They expected humanity to be weakened by the loss of their colonies and trade relationships. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The last transport ships were already crossing into Sol system carrying more than just refugees. They carried the seeds of something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would grow in the darkness of exile and emerge stronger than anyone imagined. The Exodus was ending, but the real story was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the last human ship crossed into Sol system. The galaxy beyond had grown quiet without human voices on the communication channels. Trade routes that humans had established were slowly being taken over by other species. Colonies that had housed human families for generations now stood empty or had been claimed by alien governments. But inside the Sol system something unprecedented was happening. The space around Earth buzzed with activity that had never been seen before. Massive construction projects stretched from Mercury to Jupiter. Ships moved in organized patterns that looked more like a complex dance than normal space traffic. General Lim Hyun-woo stood on the command deck of Titan Station watching. the construction of the largest shipyard in human history. The station orbited Saturn and served as the coordination center for projects happening throughout the outer system. Around Jupiter's moons, enormous industrial facilities were being built at a pace that seemed impossible. General, reported his aide captain, Seo Ji-hoon, construction teams have completed the first phase of the Ganymede yards. We can now build ships 3 times larger than anything we had before the Exile. Lim Hyun-woo nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. Through the observation windows, he could see the glow of fusion reactors being installed on dozens of new vessels. These were not the same kind of ships humans had built when they were part of galactic civilization. These were something entirely new. What about Dr. Song's research? He asked. She reports significant progress. The silicium deposits are yielding results better than projected. Dr. Song Myung had become the most important scientist in the Sol system. Her laboratory on Ceres was where the mysterious element discovered by engineer Russo Jin was being studied and refined. The element they now called silicium was proving to have properties that challenged everything humans thought they knew about physics. In her lab, Song Myung worked with a team of researchers who had been carefully selected from among the refugees. Many had been part of classified projects before the Exile. Others were brilliant minds who had been overlooked by galactic academic institutions because their ideas were too radical. The energy output is incredible, Song Myung explained to her research partner, Dr. Nam Woo-seok. 1 kilogram of refined silicium produces more power than a fusion reactor running for a full year. But that is not the most interesting part. She showed him readings from their latest experiments. The data looked impossible, but she had verified it dozens of times. When silicium was exposed to certain electromagnetic frequencies, it seemed to bend space around itself in ways that created shortcuts through normal spacetime. If we can control this effect, she continued, we could build engines that move ships faster than anything in the galaxy. We could create weapons that hit targets before the enemy even knows we have fired. We could build defenses that exist partially outside normal space. Nam Woo-seok studied the data with growing excitement. How long before we can build practical applications? 6 months for the first prototypes. Maybe less if we get more resources. The resources were not a problem. President Kang Borum had restructured the entire human economy around the development of silicium technology. Every mining operation and manufacturing facility in the system was contributing to the effort. It was the largest scientific project in human history. President Kang Borum had been elected on a platform of human unity after the Exile. Her speeches were broadcast throughout the system, and her message was always the same. Humanity had been cast out because they were different. Now they would embrace that difference and become something the galaxy had never seen. They wanted us gone because we were unpredictable, she announced during her latest address to the system-wide parliament. They said we did not respect their natural order. They claimed we were dangerous because we changed things instead of accepting them. Well, they were right about all of that. And now they are going to see what unpredictable really looks like. The parliament chamber erupted in cheers. Representatives from every major settlement in the system stood and applauded. These were people who had lost everything when they were forced to leave their homes among the stars. Now they were being offered something in return, a chance to build something better. The first test of their new capabilities came sooner than expected. Captain Oh Jae-hyun was leading a routine patrol near the edge of Sol system when his sensors detected ships approaching from galactic space. The vessels were flying in formation and broadcasting Galactic Council identification codes. This is Captain Oh Jae-hyun of the human patrol vessel New Horizon. He transmitted on standard diplomatic frequencies. You are entering Sol system space. State your business. The response came from a being whose voice carried the arrogance that humans had learned to expect from galactic officials. This is Commander Velkarin of the Galactic Enforcement Division. We are conducting a routine inspection for contraband technology. Prepare to be boarded. Oh Jae-hyun looked at his crew. They were all veterans who had served with him before the Exile. They remembered what it was like to be ordered around by alien bureaucrats who treated humans like junior partners in their own civilization. Negative, Commander Velkarin, Oh Jae-hyun replied. Sol system is human territory. You have no authority. Here, turn around and leave. There was a long pause before the alien commander responded. Human vessel, you will comply with Galactic Council regulations or face the consequences. We have the authority to inspect any ship or facility suspected of developing prohibited weapons technology. Oh, Jae-hyun smiled. It was the same smile that Admiral Kim Tae-ho had worn when he announced Operation Homecoming. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment. Commander, let me make something clear, Oh Jae-hyun said. 2 years ago, your people voted to exile us from galactic space. You told us we had no place in your civilization. You forced us to abandon everything we had built among the stars. So we left. And when we left, we stopped following your rules. But alien ships moved closer in what was clearly a threatening formation. There were 6 of them against Oh Jae-hyun's single patrol vessel. Under normal circumstances, it would not have been a fair fight. But these were not normal circumstances. All ships, this is Sol Defense Command, came a new voice over the communication channel. Unknown vessels, you are ordered to leave Sol System immediately. You have 60 seconds to comply. Commander Velkarin transmitted back with obvious anger. Sol Defense Command, this is a Galactic Council enforcement action. You will not interfere. 45 seconds, was the only reply. The alien commander made a fatal mistake. He assumed that humans were still the same species he remembered from before the Exile. He thought they would back down when faced with superior firepower. He ordered his ships to target the human patrol vessel. The response was swift and overwhelming. Defense platforms that had been invisible until that moment suddenly appeared throughout the area. They seemed to materialize out of empty space using technology that the alien scanners could not detect or track. The platforms were armed with weapons that fired beams of pure energy that moved faster than light itself. The alien ships found themselves surrounded by firepower that was beyond anything in their experience. Their shields collapsed instantly. Their weapons systems went offline before they could return fire. In less than 30 seconds, 6 Galactic enforcement vessels were drifting helplessly in space, with their crews alive but their ships completely disabled. Commander Velkarin, Ojehian, transmitted. Your ships are disabled but not destroyed. We could have killed you all, but we chose not to. Consider that a message to your superiors. Next time we might not be so merciful. Emergency beacons, activated on the alien ships as their crews called for rescue. But the rescue ships would take days to arrive. That gave them plenty of time to think about what they had experienced. When the reports reached Galactic Council headquarters, the response was panic. The technology humans had displayed was decades ahead of anything in galactic space. The speed and precision of the attack suggested military capabilities that should not have been possible. Intelligence analysts studied the sensor recordings from the disabled ships. The human defense platforms seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Their weapons fired energy beams that somehow arrived at their targets before they were fired. The entire engagement violated fundamental laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. In the halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called to discuss what had happened at Sol System. Representatives who had voted for human exile 2 years earlier were now wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late for second thoughts. Humanity had spent 2 years in isolation, building something that the galaxy had never seen before. They had taken the mysterious element that only they could detect and turned it into technology that challenged the basic rules of reality. The galaxy had wanted humans gone because they were unpredictable and dangerous. Now they were discovering just how dangerous an unpredictable species could be when they had nothing left to lose and unlimited time to prepare. The isolation was ending, but humanity was no longer the same species that had been exiled. They had evolved into something entirely new, something that wrote its own rules, and they were ready to show the galaxy what those new rules looked like. 5 years after the exile, humanity had rewritten the rules of space warfare. Admiral Bei Sang-ho commanded fleets of ships that moved like ghosts through space and struck like lightning. The vessels were sleek and dark, powered by silicium cores that bent reality around them. They could appear anywhere without warning and disappear just as quickly. The ships looked nothing like the blocky utilitarian vessels humans had built before the exile. These new designs were elegant and deadly, with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in ways that defied physics as the galaxy understood it. They could accelerate instantly without crushing their crews in turn, at angles that should have torn them apart. The first real test came when the Zephyrian Trade Consortium decided to reclaim mining rights in the Tau Ceti system. The consortium was one of the most powerful commercial organizations in the galaxy. They controlled trade routes through dozens of star systems and had private military forces that could challenge small governments. The Zephyrians had legal documents showing they owned mining rights to 17 asteroids in the Tau Ceti belt. The rights had been purchased legally through the Galactic Commerce Board before humans ever arrived in the system. When humanity was exiled, the consortium assumed those rights would automatically return to them. They were wrong about that assumption. Commodore Nam Yujin received the message while her small fleet was conducting patrol exercises near the edge of Sol System. The communication was formal and polite, but the meaning was clear. The Zephyrians were coming to take back what they considered their property. Nam Yujin was 38 years old and had never commanded more than 3 ships at one time before the exile. But she had learned fast during the 5 years of isolation. She understood the new technology better than officers twice her age. More importantly, she understood what the exile had taught humanity about dealing with alien civilizations. Prepare the squadron for immediate departure. She ordered her communications. Officer Lee Daeyoung, set course for Tau Ceti. Maximum velocity. Should we request additional ships? Daeyoung asked. Intelligence reports show the Zephyrians are bringing a full battle fleet. 47 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers. Nam Yujin smiled. The way humans had learned to smile when aliens made threats. It was not a pleasant expression. 3 ships will be enough. Signal Sol Command that we are implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something that had been developed during secret planning sessions in the months after the Exile. It was the official policy for dealing with alien attempts to reclaim territory or resources that humans had legally acquired. Before being cast out of galactic society, the protocol was simple. Humanity would defend what was theirs, regardless of what galactic law said about it. They had been voted out of the galactic community, so galactic law no longer applied to them. The journey to Tau Ceti took 6 hours using the new Silasium drives. The human ships moved through space that was not quite normal space, following paths that alien sensors could not track. They arrived at the asteroid mining fields, while the Zephyrian fleet was still 3 days away, traveling through conventional hyperspace. Nam Yujin used those 3 days to prepare. Her ships deployed sensor networks that could detect approaching vessels from light years away. They positioned defensive platforms in locations that would give them maximum tactical advantage. Most importantly, they sent a message that would be waiting when the aliens arrived. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace, exactly where human calculations had predicted. 47 ships in perfect military formation, with weapons powered and shields raised. They were ready for a fight, but they expected to be fighting the same kind of humans they remembered from before the Exile. Admiral Voran commanded the Zephyrian forces from his flagship. He was a veteran of dozens of commercial disputes, and had never lost a battle against competitors who tried to challenge consortium claims. He expected this engagement to be routine. Human vessels, he transmitted on standard frequencies. You are illegally occupying Zephyrian territory. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response came not from Nam Yujin, but from a recorded message that had been prepared days earlier. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Commodore Nam Yujin of the Human Defense Force. The asteroids you claim were legally purchased by human miners before the Galactic Exile. You voted us out of your galaxy. That means your laws no longer apply to us. Leave now, or we will make you leave. Admiral Voran studied his tactical displays. His sensors showed only 3 human ships against his 47. The odds were overwhelmingly in his favor. Even if human technology had improved during the Exile, there was no way 3 ships could stand against a full battle fleet. Human Commodore, he transmitted back. You have 10 minutes to withdraw. After that, we will consider you hostile invaders and respond accordingly. You have 10 seconds. Came Nam Yujin's reply. The Zephyrian admiral was still trying to process that response when the human attack began. It did not start with weapons, fire, or missile launches. It started with 3 human ships that suddenly seemed to be everywhere at once. The vessels moved through space in patterns that made no sense. They appeared beside Zephyrian ships and vanished before weapons could lock onto them. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously, even though there were only 3 of them. They moved faster than light without using hyperspace technology. Nam Yujin watched the battle from the command deck of her flagship. Her tactical officer, Jamin, reported targeting solutions as fast as he could speak. Enemy formation is breaking apart. They cannot track our movement patterns. Their weapons are firing at empty space. Begin attack sequence, Nam Yujin ordered. The human ships opened fire with weapons that violated everything the galaxy thought it knew about energy projection. The beams seemed to arrive at their targets before they were fired. Zephyrian shields collapsed instantly when hit. Armor plating that should have been nearly indestructible was sliced through like paper. But the human ships were not trying to destroy the alien fleet. They were demonstrating what destruction would look like if they chose to cause it. Weapon systems were disabled with surgical precision. Engines were knocked offline without causing hull breaches. Communication arrays were destroyed while life support systems remained intact. In 4 minutes, the entire Zephyrian battle fleet was drifting helplessly in space. 47 ships disabled by 3 human vessels using technology that seemed to operate outside the normal laws of physics. Admiral Voran Nam Yujin transmitted to the crippled flagship. Your fleet is disabled, but your crews are alive. We could have killed you all, but chose not to. This is your lesson in how things work now. The galaxy voted to exile us. That means galactic law no longer applies to human territory. She paused to let that message sink in before continuing. These asteroids belong to humans. We bought them legally, and we will keep them. If you or anyone else tries to take them from us again, we will not be so merciful next time. The Zephyrian admiral tried to respond, but his communication systems had been destroyed. His rescue beacons were still functioning, so help would eventually arrive, but it would take days for rescue ships to reach them. Days to think about what had just happened. Dr. Haywon had been analyzing galactic civilization for 5 years. Since the Exile, her research division on Luna studied everything humans had learned about alien species during 50 years of contact. She had identified patterns that others had missed. They are predictable, she explained to President Kang Bioram during a briefing session. Every galactic species follows the same basic patterns. They rely on established trade routes. They use standardized technology. They follow ancient laws and traditions. Most importantly, they cannot adapt quickly to new situations. What does that mean for us? The president asked. It means we have advantages they cannot understand, HFY replied. We were forced to start over. That freed us from their limitations. We built new technology instead of upgrading old systems. We created new tactics instead of following established doctrine. We wrote new laws instead of following ancient traditions. She showed the president tactical analysis from the Tau Ceti engagement. The Zephyrian fleet had responded exactly as her models predicted. They had followed standard military doctrine even when that doctrine was clearly not working. They cannot think outside the patterns they have followed for thousands of years, HFY continued. But humans have always been best at adapting to new situations. The exile forced us to adapt faster than ever before. President Kang Borum studied the reports with growing satisfaction. The engagement at Tau Ceti had been more than a military victory. It had been a message to the entire galaxy that humanity was no longer playing by the old rules. What do our intelligence sources tell us about Galactic reaction to the incident? She asked. Panic, HFY replied simply. The Galactic Council is calling emergency sessions. Military planners are trying to understand technology they cannot detect or track. Commercial organizations are reconsidering any claims they might have to former human territory. Good, the president said. Let them panic. Let them realize what they unleashed when they voted to exile us. News of the Tau Ceti incident spread through galactic communication networks within days. The story grew in the telling as it passed from species to species. 3 human ships had defeated a major battle fleet using impossible technology. The humans were no longer refugees hiding in their home system. They were something new and dangerous. In the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives who had voted for the exile 5 years earlier were beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They had assumed that isolating humanity would weaken them. Instead, it had given them time and motivation to evolve into something the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity had been exiled because they were unpredictable and dangerous. 5 years of isolation had made them infinitely more unpredictable and immeasurably more dangerous. The galaxy was beginning to realize that they had not gotten rid of a problem. They had created a much bigger one, and humanity was just getting started. 10 years after the exile, humanity came knocking on the galaxy's door, but they were not the same species that had been cast out a decade earlier. They came as equals demanding recognition, not as supplicants begging for readmission. The galaxy was about to learn that exile had transformed humanity into something entirely new. Fleet Admiral Zhou Sungmin led the first human diplomatic mission beyond Sol System in 10 years. His flagship was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The vessel seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else entirely. It moved through hyperspace routes that should not have been possible and arrived at destinations before it should have left its starting point. The ship that entered Galactic Council space defied every law of physics that galactic science understood. Sensors could barely detect it even when it was directly in front of them. When they did get readings, the data made no sense. The vessel appeared to be multiple ships and no ships at the same time. Ambassador Li Yunji emerged from the impossible ship wearing the crisp uniform of the new human She was 45 years old and had spent the last decade helping to rebuild human civilization from the ground up. She spoke with the confidence of someone representing a power that no longer needed anything from anyone else. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, she announced to the emergency session that had been called when human ships appeared without warning in council space. I am Ambassador Li Yunji of the Human Concordat. We are not here to rejoin your organization. We are here to establish new diplomatic relations between humanity and whoever chooses to deal with us. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Thousands of alien representatives began talking at once. The translator system struggled to keep up with the chaos. No one had expected humans to return with demands rather than requests. Councillor Veltar of the Hegemony rose from his seat near the center podium. He was the same crystalline being who had delivered the exile verdict 10 years earlier. His internal lights flashed with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. You were exiled, he declared. You have no legal standing in galactic space. You cannot simply appear here and make demands. Ambassador Li Yunji smiled. It was the same expression that human negotiators had worn during the exile proceedings, but now it carried a weight that made alien observers uncomfortable. Your laws exiled us from your space counselor, but we have found our own space. We are here to discuss relations between 2 separate powers. Behind her, Captain Ko Minesio began transmitting data that appeared on screens throughout the chamber. The star charts showed impossible things. Human colonies in locations that galactic science said were uninhabitable. Settlements in the spaces between galaxies where no life should be able to exist. Cities built in dimensions that most species did not even know existed. This is impossible, protested Councillor Zeph Marina of the Trade Federation. These locations cannot support life. Our surveys proved that centuries ago. Your surveys were limited by your understanding of physics. Li Yunji replied calmly. We discovered that your understanding was incomplete. The data continued to flow. Human settlements in the galactic core where radiation should have killed any organic life. Artificial habitats floating in dark matter clouds that should have been impossible to detect, let alone colonize. Most shocking of all were the thriving worlds that existed in folded space where a single planet could contain the resources of an entire star system. Admiral Tith Coven of the Enforcement Division studied the displays with growing alarm. These were not refugee camps or desperate survival outposts. These were advanced civilizations with populations in the millions. Infrastructure that rivaled anything. In galactic space, technology that appeared to be centuries ahead of galactic standards. How many humans are there now? He asked. Captain Ko Menesio consulted her datapad. Current population of the human concordat is approximately 47 million across 138 worlds and installations. The number hit the chamber like a shockwave. When humanity had been exiled, their total population had been barely 3 million. In 10 years they had not just survived but multiplied by 15 times. They had built an civilization that spanned more worlds than most galactic empires. Where did these people come from? Demanded Counselor Veltar. We built them, Li Yu replied simply. Genetic reconstruction, artificial gestation, accelerated development. Technologies your laws prohibited, but your exile freed us to explore. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just survived their isolation, they had used it to develop capabilities that galactic civilization had forbidden or feared to pursue. They had broken every taboo and transcended every limitation that had held back galactic progress for millennia. Dr. Yoon Hwa-young served as the mission's science advisor. She had spent 10 years developing technologies that galactic science said were impossible. Now she explained those developments to an audience that could barely comprehend what they were hearing. Standard galactic physics assumes that space is fixed and unchangeable, she began, but we discovered that consciousness can alter the fundamental structure of reality at the quantum level. Human neural patterns interact with silesium in ways that allow us to reshape the universe around us. That is theoretical nonsense, interrupted Chief Scientist Morjith of the Research Collective. Consciousness cannot affect physical reality. You are correct that it cannot, Yoon Hwa-young agreed. For your species, human consciousness operates differently. We discovered this during our exile when we had nothing left to lose and unlimited time to experiment. She activated a portable demonstration device. The small machine contained a fragment of processed silesium connected to human neural interfaces. When activated, it created a pocket of space that was larger inside than outside. It was a miniature version of the technology that allowed human ships to carry impossible amounts of cargo and weapons. This is how we built 138 worlds in 10 years, she explained to the stunned audience. This is how our ships move faster than light without using hyperspace. This is how we exist in places you cannot reach and build things you cannot understand. The demonstration had a profound effect on the alien observers. Many species had spent thousands of years trying to achieve the kind of space manipulation that humans were displaying casually. The implications for weapons, technology, and defensive capabilities were terrifying. Counselor Veltar attempted to regain control of the situation. Even if these claims are true, you are still subjects of galactic law. The exile order can be reversed, but you must accept council authority. Ambassador Li Yunji looked at him with an expression that mixed pity with amusement. Counselor, you seem to misunderstand our position. We are not asking to return to your galactic community. We are informing you that a new power exists and offering to establish diplomatic relations. He gestured to Captain Ko Menesio, who transmitted new data to the chamber displays. Fleet movements showing human ships in territories that the galaxy considered empty space. Trade routes connecting human worlds to alien systems through pathways that bypassed all galactic commerce networks. Most disturbing of all were the population centers that existed in folded space where galactic sensors could not detect them. We estimate that within 5 years human territory will encompass more habitable space than the entire current galactic civilization. Leonji continued, within 10 years we will have the industrial capacity to outproduce all galactic worlds. Combined, we are offering to share this growth with species that choose to work with us. The offer was both generous and threatening. Humanity was not demanding revenge for their exile, but they were making it clear that they no longer needed galactic civilization for anything. They had built something better, and they were willing to let others benefit from it if they chose to cooperate. Admiral Jo Suk-min finally spoke from his position near the chamber entrance. The vote to exile Earth was 847-3. You declared us unwelcome in your galaxy. So we built our own galaxy, one with better rules and greater possibilities. The silence that followed was profound. Every alien representative in the chamber understood what they were hearing. The species they had cast out as troublesome neighbors had returned as a superpower that made their entire civilization look primitive by comparison. "What do you want from us?" asked Counselor Zeph Marina quietly. "Nothing," Li Yunji replied. "We want nothing from you, but we are willing to offer partnership to those who prove they can adapt to new realities. The galaxy is about to change whether you participate or not. You can be part of that change, or you can watch it happen from the sidelines." The human delegation prepared to leave, but their message would echo through galactic space for years to come. The species that had been exiled for being unpredictable had returned as something beyond prediction. They had transcended the limitations that defined galactic civilization and built something entirely new. The vote to exile Earth had been meant to preserve galactic stability. Instead, it had unleashed forces that would reshape reality itself, and humanity was just getting started. 15 years after the exile vote, the galaxy had fractured into two competing civilizations. Half the council members maintained secret trade agreements with humanity despite official sanctions. The other half clung desperately to the old ways. While watching their influence crumble, change was coming whether they wanted it or not. Economic coordinator Shin Dong-wook managed the shadow economy that had grown up around human technology. His office on New Geneva Station processed trade requests from dozens of alien species who wanted access to human innovations. The station itself existed in folded space, where galactic authorities could not detect or interfere with its operations. "We have requests from 47 different species this month," reported his assistant Park Yura. "The Altarians want gravity manipulation technology. The Cephians are offering rare metals for genetic reconstruction techniques. The Valdorians are requesting partnership in building impossible space habitats." Shin Dong-wook studied the list with satisfaction. These were the same species that had voted to exile humanity 15 years earlier. Now they were begging for access to human science and technology. The transformation was complete. Approve the Altarian request, but limit the technology transfer. 2 civilian applications, he decided. The Cephians can have basic genetic techniques but not military applications. As for the Valdorians, they must agree to full partnership terms, including technology sharing, in both directions. The shadow economy had become larger than most galactic governments. Human innovations were spreading through alien civilizations, whether the Galactic Council approved or not. Species that adapted to working with humans prospered. Those that rejected change found themselves falling behind. But the real test was coming. Deep space monitoring stations had detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. The signals were unlike anything in galactic databases. Whatever was coming was powerful and hostile and completely unknown. The Devourer crisis began with the destruction of 3 star systems on the galactic rim. The attacks came without warning from ships that seemed to absorb light and energy. Entire planets were stripped of life in hours. Solar systems went dark as their stars were somehow extinguished. Galactic Defense Force Admiral Keth Phelan commanded the response fleet from his massive dreadnought. He had spent 30 years fighting pirates and rebels and territorial disputes. He had never faced anything like this. The enemy ships were larger than cities and moved through space like living creatures. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, "enemy vessels are not responding to any known weapon systems. Energy weapons are absorbed completely. Kinetic weapons pass through them without causing damage. Nuclear weapons seem to make them stronger." Admiral Keth Phelan studied the sensor readings with growing despair. His fleet of 800 ships was the largest military force in galactic history, but they might as well have been throwing rocks at a hurricane. The enemy vessels consumed everything they touched and grew larger with each victory. "Send an emergency transmission to Galactic Council headquarters," he ordered. "Request immediate assistance from all member species. This threat is beyond our current capabilities." The transmission that reached the Council was filled with panic. The greatest military force in galactic civilization was helpless against an enemy that operated outside all known laws of warfare. Traditional tactics failed completely. Standard weapons had no effect. The galaxy faced extinction and their military could not even slow down the attackers. In desperation, the Council voted to send Special Envoy Morden to negotiate with humanity. The same species they had exiled 15 years earlier was now their only hope for survival. The irony was not lost on anyone involved. President Chai the Jin received the alien delegate in her office aboard Harmony Station. The massive facility existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously and served as the capital of the human concordat. The president was 53 years old and had spent 18 years helping to build a civilization that transcended galactic limitations. Honored President Morden began formally. "The Galactic Council requests assistance in dealing with an extragalactic threat. Our conventional forces have proven inadequate against the enemy capabilities." President Chai Vaj studied the alien envoy with calm eyes. She had been a refugee fleeing her home when the exile began. Now she commanded resources that dwarfed anything the galaxy could imagine. The transformation had been complete. "Let me understand this situation clearly," she said. 15 years ago, your people voted to exile humanity because we were too dangerous. and unpredictable, you forced us to abandon everything we had built among the stars. Now you want the species you cast out to save the galaxy that rejected us." Morden shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The truth was painful but undeniable. The threat we face is beyond our experience. Your people have developed capabilities that might be effective against these attackers. "What capabilities, specifically?" asked Admiral Park Junho, who commanded the human defense fleets. His ships were visible through the station's transparent walls, floating in impossible formations that defied galactic understanding of space warfare. "Your ability to manipulate spacetime," Morden replied. "Your weapons that strike before being fired, your defenses that exist partially outside normal reality. Technologies that our science cannot explain or duplicate." President Chai the-jin exchanged glances with her military advisor. They had expected this moment would come eventually. The galaxy that had rejected humanity would eventually need what only humanity could provide. The price? Admiral Park Junho asked directly. Morden hesitated. The terms had been debated for weeks in emergency council sessions. What humanity was asking for would fundamentally change galactic civilization. But the alternative was extinction. Complete recognition of human sovereignty over all current and future human territories. He began slowly. Formal acknowledgement that the human concordat is an equal power, not subject to galactic law. Restructuring of the Galactic Council to include humanity as a separate partner rather than a member. And, President Chai the-jin prompted, access to human technology for all council species that agree to partnership terms. Revision of galactic law to permit technologies and techniques that were previously forbidden. Recognition that humanity has the right to continue expanding and developing without council interference. The terms were revolutionary. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had been built on rigid laws and ancient traditions. What humanity demanded would shatter that structure and replace it with something entirely new. Captain Wang Jimin commanded the hybrid human-alien crews that would spearhead the defense against the Devourer threat. Her ships combined human technology with alien expertise in ways that created capabilities neither species could achieve alone. The crews worked together in harmony that would have been impossible before the Exile. Target analysis complete, she reported to Fleet Command. Enemy vessels operate by converting matter directly into energy. They grow stronger by consuming physical objects including conventional weapons, but they appear vulnerable to reality manipulation attacks. The solution was elegant and terrible. Human ships would use silatium-powered weapons to create localized changes in the fundamental laws of physics. Areas where matter and energy behaved differently. Zones where the enemy vessels could not function because the rules they depended on no longer applied. The battle for galactic survival took place across 17 star systems simultaneously. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at targets the enemy could not predict or counter. They created pockets of altered spacetime, where the Devourer vessels found themselves unable to function. Captain Wang Jimin transmitted a message across all galactic frequencies as her fleet engaged the largest enemy formation. Attention, all galactic forces. This is the Human Defense Fleet. You wanted us gone because we broke your rules. Now we are back with better ones. Today we saved the galaxy that tried to destroy us. The Devourer vessels were powerful, but they operated according to fixed principles. They consumed matter and energy following patterns that had worked across countless galaxies, but they had never encountered a species that could rewrite the basic rules of reality. Human weapons struck targets that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Defense fields created areas where time moved backward and energy flowed uphill. Tactics that violated every law of physics as the galaxy understood them but worked perfectly according to human science. The enemy fleet was not destroyed in any conventional sense. It was displaced into dimensions where its feeding capabilities could not function. The threat to galactic civilization ended not with explosions but with the quiet displacement of hostile forces into realities where they could cause no harm. 20 years after the Exile vote, Xena historians would mark it as the beginning of the Second Galactic Age. The old council still existed, but it shared power with the human concordat, in a partnership that neither side had imagined possible. Dr. Ansora published her landmark study titled The Exile Paradox: How Isolation Accelerated Human Evolution 5 years after the Devourer crisis ended. Her conclusion was simple and profound. By forcing humanity to survive alone, the galaxy had created its own successor. Traditional galactic civilization was built on the principle that change should be slow and carefully controlled. She wrote, humanity represented the opposite philosophy, that adaptation and innovation were necessary for survival. The Exile forced a test between these two approaches. The results speak for themselves. The galaxy that voted for Exile had wanted to preserve their ancient ways by removing a disruptive influence. Instead, they had given that influence time and motivation to evolve beyond their ability to control or understand. The new galactic order was built on principles that would have been unthinkable before the Exile. Technology that transcended traditional limitations, laws that adapted to changing circumstances rather than preserving ancient traditions. Cooperation between species based on mutual benefit rather than rigid hierarchy. At the center of it all was humanity. No longer the junior partners seeking acceptance but the driving force behind a civilization that rewrote the rules of existence. Itself, they had been cast out for being unpredictable and dangerous. They had returned as something beyond prediction and capable of redefining what danger itself meant. The rulebook had not just been burned, it had been rewritten entirely, and humanity held the pen that would write the future of galactic civilization. The exile that was meant to end humanity's influence had instead given them the opportunity to transform the galaxy itself. Sometimes the greatest victories come from the most devastating defeats. Sometimes being forced to start over is exactly what is needed to build something better. The galaxy had voted to exile Earth. Earth had responded by giving them a better galaxy, and the story was just beginning.